People, deluded, I'm back again. Thank you very much for tuning back in. Now I'm doing this via Zoom and I can see it actually has not done the green screen very well because my head is black, like my hair is black and it's a bit green. I know my hair is picky and I need a haircut, but this just makes it worse. Update on the camera situation. I sent the camera I bought back. It just doesn't agree with me, people. It just wasn't happening. Ordered a new one, which should be here tomorrow. Sent the old one back. So tomorrow, hopefully, we're back to familiar settings. But for now, we have to deal with it. And it is what it is. With what's happening globally, the most important thing is that we're safe, not that it's got the most best graphics and things like that. But moving forward, and actually a reason for this video as to why I sent this camera back, I actually spoke on Denis Suarez and Wellington Silva, and this camera decided to only record some of it. So I'm doing it again via Zoom. Now, if you've all been paying attention to Denis Suarez, he very open with how his time at Arsenal went. And, you know, it's well documented that he was only fit for, essentially, in his own words, 1 week at Arsenal. And he had some knocks. And we all know in a day and age where Arsenal allegedly are in problems financially and have to be a bit smarter about where they drop their pennies, to waste 5 million on Denis Suarez, or I say 5, I'm pretty sure it's now come out that it was 2 million. It makes it, while it not be the biggest of fees, it does look silly. But let's read from The Athletic, and actually one of the big reasons as to why I'm happy you lot support my stuff, because through doing that, we've obviously been able to invest in several things, like a subscription to The Athletic. Wish you lot would click on the ads more, because the last AdSense paycheck, whoa, it's not enough, mate. It's not enough, mate. We're not going to be able to do what we need to do. And a lot of you lot say to make a Patron and stuff, but that's a bit mad. But moving forward, obviously, the statistics are pretty damning on Denis Suarez's time. You know, to be fair, he did have injuries, but he didn't have much of a chance. No one really, when did he play 90 minutes? He probably played 90 minutes in Dubai or wherever. Didn't play 90 minutes in the Prem, didn't get a goal or assist. And the sheer minutes he was able to play, it weren't good enough, really and truly. It weren't enough time to really show what you could do, even if you did. You know, we signed him in January 2019, which is always a difficult month to sign players. He didn't start a game, didn't complete 90 minutes. In the Premier League, he only featured 67 for 67 minutes on 4 separate substitute appearances. His longest on the pitch was against Manchester City, where he played 24 minutes. Obviously, by then, he was losing 3-1. Probably the best time on the pitch was obviously the pre-season, mid-season break in Dubai, where he played 90 minutes, and also dribbling past Paul Pogba. But he's only played, forgive me if I'm wrong, against City, Manchester United, I'm pretty sure Brighton, Bournemouth, and Huddersfield, and a combined 67 minutes. So, and that's 2 minutes here, 10 minutes there. It can't really affect a game. And I will say this as well. You know, he was never fit, but he was on the bench. And on one hand, as a fan, for me, if you're on the bench, you're fit. Now, don't get me wrong. If, like I said in the previous feed, if it's a thing where, let's say, and it's obviously I'm not comparing the players, but just to highlight the importance, let's just say Aubameyang gets an injury, or let's say Cristiano Ronaldo gets an injury, and I'm a manager, I'm still trying to win games. Obviously, we know what Aubameyang, and if you want to use the Ronaldo example, they can do in it. You know what they offer a team. Let's just say they've got a knock. They're clearly working their way back from injury. You know, you're sensible. You realise 90 minutes might be a big ask. Starting the game might be a big ask. But because of what Aubameyang would give Arteta, or if you've got Cristiano Ronaldo to have a slightly more unrealistic example, you know, you might say, all right, they're only, you know, he's got a knock. He's not able to run. You know, depending on the knock, there might be still, he's not 100%. But, you know, a 30% him, you know, for the last 20 or so minutes, he can give me something, or a 30% him in general is better than what most man at 100% could give me, you know, so you put them on the bench. So we all know just because you're on the bench doesn't mean you're fully fit. You might be rusty, you might be fully knocked. But this is where I think clubs could be a bit smarter, because on one hand, I don't really have excuses within obvious reasons and context. If you're on the bench, you should be fit. You're fit. You shouldn't put a man on the bench. Think about it. If you're going to war, you're not going to bring a man that's, you know, he might be a top right gunman and he might be able to shoot people. But, you know, if his trigger finger's bust and he's broke his shoulder, you're not going to bring him. It's not going to help, is it? It's not. You're not going to do it. You're going to say, no, don't be involved in the match day in the army until you've patterned that. When you get over that injury, you can come back and do something. And the same logic should be for players to a degree. If you're not fully 100% fit, what is the point? Because you set people up for failure to a degree. Because Suarez has never been fit, but we're looking at him like, boy, he's a dud, you know, boy, he's not good enough. And there's several other players and I think I've made a video about it. I think that's something England can improve, in fact, because, you know, Paul Pogba, and again, by the time I've said him or Mesut Ozil's names, you're either in arms or you're unhealthily obsessed with these players. But if people knew the severity of Ozil's problems, of Pogba's issues, of Bellerin's issues with injuries, I'm not saying there won't be constructive criticism, but most people will sit there and go, all right, cool. Maybe what I was saying was a bit harsh considering the new information that's presented. I do think he set people up. If we knew this, the amount of players that play, and it's stupid, but play not 100%, and they're playing poorly, and people don't know this, but they're getting onto them, things might change. So I do think he was set up kind of for failure. His longest time on the pitch came on his debut, 24 minutes, as I said. Sadly, he did not score, record an assist, or according to Opta, create a clear chance for a teammate in the English top flight. Now, 67 minutes across 4 games, it is difficult. You're not going to be able to create stats and you're going to look rubbish. You must admit, to not create a chance for a teammate, regardless of how long you've had on the pitch, is a bit mad. But it is what it is. Even during our run to the Europa League final, he only played 28 minutes home and away against Partey Borisov. But the man himself has said, he says, obviously it was a bad loan because I did not play, but there were circumstances which I would like the fans to understand. Apparently, we initially tried to consider a permanent offer, and Barcelona's valuation of 23 million was deemed too excessive for us to part within that window. Obviously, there was allegedly an option to buy and obviously a 2 million loan fee. Apparently, Emre made repeated calls to convince the player. So obviously, he's at Barcelona. You know, probably shouldn't have went back to Barcelona, should have left, but he went. He's not playing. You know, Arsenal and Barcelona, there's no contest. Even if you are a good player like him, he'd be inclined to believe, you know, I can come to Arsenal, potentially become important, potentially make them, you know, fight permanently for my signature. The law of the Premier League. Obviously, I was in the Premier League technically with City, but I didn't get an opportunity. So there's that carrot. You know, Raul Sanllehi, my fellow countryman, someone with Barcelona connections, knows what I'm on, wanted me for the club. Someone I've played previously under, Unai Emery's wanted me. This is the perfect thing I need to get my career going again, sort of thing. And it's sad how it's turned out, because he told The Athletic, Unai told me he was looking for a winger where Alex Iwobi or Henrik Mkhitaryan played. It's not my best position, but I can play on the wing. So clearly he likes to play probably as a cam. He said, he insisted to me, come here, you will play. Don't stay in Barcelona. Play. And when we can sign you, and then we can sign you. So, of course, what does that tell you? That tells you Arsenal never had the money to bring him in permanently. We want him to come play to the point where, you know, we can make him, you know, there's a character become permanent. Barca might part with him. I think we can make a few bob on him, really. So if his loan spell did excel, clearly there was an option to make him permanent there, really and truly, people. And he wanted to come here. Obviously, he went on to say, and which leads me to believe, you know, this is consistent because you was hearing at the time, Denis Suarez has to sign a new deal at Barcelona before he moves on. And I'm pretty sure he did. But you heard, I wanted Arsenal to sign me, but the club were not able to at the time. Instead, they said, come here, get the opportunity. Then when you have a year remaining on your contract, we can sign you. So clearly the plan was was for him to come here, excel, and obviously tempt Barca with him not signing a new deal or whatever to part ways with him, sort of approach. And he said they were not able to at the time. He said, come here. They said, come here, get the continuity. Then when you have a year remaining on your contract, we can sign you. So, okay, it sounded good. The truth is, I rejected other clubs. Real Betis, Seville, AC Milan all wanted me. I took the risk of going on loan. I could have signed for those other clubs on a 4 or 5 year deal. That's how much I wanted it to work at Arsenal. So people don't know what fully happened. So yeah, man, he wanted to come to Arsenal. He wanted to pick the hardest challenge from what he's saying. I mean, he could have went to Betis where the expectations are different, where he could be feeling a bit more of the love. Could have returned to Seville where he had a decent spell, or he could have joined a historically massive club in AC Milan. But he chose the hardest one, which was the less security in that. He's coming to Arsenal. If he excels, Arsenal and Barca might fight respectively for his signature. If what happens where it's in a bit of an indifferent one, but Arsenal clearly not going to make it permanent, Barca might be looking at you funny and you have to assess your options, sort of thing. He said, I played in my first game against Man City and then 10 days later, I got injured in the first leg against Partey Borisov in the Europa League. I had too much pain in my groin. I did tests and scans and nothing was in my groin. There was a big build-up of fluid around the pubic bone. I had sharp pain when I ran, when I shot, when I passed. It was so difficult. I was at something like 30% of my fitness. The first week was the only time I was fit. I felt it getting worse after that match against Bate Borisov. I had incredible pain. Every movement, every change of direction, every shot I tried to train through the pain. It became unsustainable. I was not in a state to play at my best. Unai could not play me as he knew I was not even near 50%. People started asking, what's going on with Denis? He has arrived, but he isn't playing. He's on the bench. He plays 15 minutes here or there, but I was in pain. At halftime of games, when other substitutes went out to do main drills on the pitch, I was in the dressing room doing a ton of different exercises so the injury would give me less pain instead of being with the rest of them. We did hear he carried I don't know what to believe, because we did hear rumours he was carrying a knot from his previous club when he signed here, and it was aggravated. We did hear he was fully fit. He came here and it got a bit mad. Either way, I think it's sad, because I do think Unai is in a difficult position, because clearly, you know, Unai's bringing him. He's not starting. Fans are right to ask why, because we don't know this information. He's playing little 15 minutes. We're asking why, to be fair. And a bit of that is clearly he wants to play the player. You can see how much the player wanted to play, so he's involving him in the match day. My problem is that, you know, obviously there's going to be questions whether he's in the team, if he's not, but surely it's easier to come out and say and face whatever music he's not fit enough to play. Because when you're bringing him on, you're questioning, you then open up the door to question, okay, he's playing 15 minutes, he's always on the bench, he must be fit. What is he or isn't he showing in training? Have Arsenal realised it's a poor signing? Is there certain other things in the background that's happened? You open the floor up to these sort of things versus just not playing him. Again, we spent 2 million on him, so we have to get some sort of use. But if I think about it logically, if someone can't help you and they're not at the best percent, what's the point of playing? He's saying he's at half time of games on the bench. He's getting treatment while the other subs are warming up and things. That's no criticism of his, but why is he on the bench then? Because from you're on the bench, you must be deemed as certainly some sort of fitness to come and improve us and help us. But if he's saying, you know, every touch, every turn, everything he's doing, you can't help us. He can't help himself, so how can he help us? So we're putting him in that fire. So maybe it might have been worth, and it's easy for me to sit here and say, taking him out of the lineup, out of the firing line, and just coming out, and I think a lot of clubs could say this, just come out and say he's not in the team, his injury is whatever, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, there's a bit of red tape around that because you don't want rivals to necessarily know fitness of your players and whatnot, but who knows, people. He went on to say, I left Barcelona to go to Arsenal on loan to try and play every week and earn the transfer to Arsenal. That was my ambition. For me, the easy option was to stay at Barcelona, finish the season, 4 months more, win the La Liga, Copa del Rey, play in the Champions League. But I decided to go to Arsenal to play. That was my desire. It became clear during the loan spell that Arsenal were not going to sign me, but also I knew that if I had barely played for Arsenal, Barcelona would not want me either. This is life. I cannot control this. I was the signing of Raul and Unai, and I wanted to prove myself and repay them. Nobody wanted to play more than me, but the situation was unsustainable. I wanted to live up to their expectations. I am sorry because I did not think Arsenal supporters truly understand the situation I was experiencing. They didn't see me play, so it's hard to evaluate the loan. And that's it really and truly, in the sense of, before I carry on in that, you know, it's a poor loan spell because, you know, you can't think of a memory where, you know, he's set up a goal, he's changed the game, he's got a goal, he's got an assist, he's linked up. Well, you can't. We know he's a technically sound player and he has been. But for one reason or another, he didn't get to show it on the field. So by default, it is a failure of a signing and 2 million down the drain, essentially. There's no way around that. And it is quite harsh. You can't evaluate the loan because he barely played, but the man was never fit. So again, he's being set up for failure, really and truly. It just didn't work out. And he said, of course it was bad. I didn't play, but there were circumstances. For example, I played in a friendly match for 90 minutes against Al Nazir in Dubai during the March international break, and the next day I could barely move for the pain. That was the reality. To recover, my injury needed rest, strength, and muscle exercises for 2 or 3 months. And it is a bit of a sad one because, again, Arsenal have to get their use out of the player. So maybe we're not necessarily going to do the best by him health-wise, because clearly it's best not playing him. He's out for 2 or 3 months. He's joined in January. Do the maths. The earliest he can be back is when the season's basically done. So he's played no part, and we spent 2 million. And it is a case of doing our due diligence, really, because, again, I don't know it to be true, but you did hear, people. We did hear. I'm sure a lot of you did that. He was carried and not before. I don't know if he's aggravated it or if this is just a completely, apologies, irrelevant injury, but we didn't get an investment on the player, really and truly. He did say, which I think is interesting as well, and again, kind of what I was saying about setting people up for failure. He said, this is not the reality. It was the opposite. In England, it is different. In Spain, when you have an injury or problem, the club puts a statement for the press. In England, it's very different. Injuries seem more like a secret. There's more mystery. And that's because managers don't want people to know the true status of their players. I was the first to be desperate to play. Unai and I had lots of discussions about how much I could play, but he could see himself I was not right and pushing myself. The fans did not see me, but okay, it did not work out. Arsenal is a great club, a club I grew up admiring. I really loved living in London. Huge club, great stadium. I wanted to be an important player for the club, and I don't have any problems with anyone there. And I understand the supporters, which is why I want them to understand. So he said, respect the supporters. I want Mikel Arteta to be successful. Arsenal have incredible potential to grow. I was there for 5 months and could sense that. They have some quality players, financial potential, and a passionate fan base. Those are the conditions that should bring Arsenal and return Arsenal to what they are. I mean, the man at the very top has got to want to win. And he did also continue to big up Arteta. He also did praise Liverpool for their transformation under Klopp. And he also did praise Pep Guardiola's City within the context of this interview as well. And it sucks for Denis Suarez, really and truly, because he didn't have much of an opportunity. Moving away from that though, folks, on a quick one, and I have been big on this. One thing I rate about Chelsea, and I know it's you know, the whole farm stuff and 30, 40 man on loan is very much bigly talked, a lot spoken of with Chelsea. I do think Arsenal would have benefited from having a team in France, having a team maybe in Portugal, having a team in Spain, having a team in, for me, Holland, with work permit laws you can get around it. I think we have learnt mistakes around, especially South American players, because again, I know it's not the same, but we've managed to get, you know, some sort of special work permit for Martinelli, because on the face of it, as a supporter, we hear you have to play a certain amount of games for your country or whatever to qualify. Now, again, work permits laws have changed in time, but could you imagine if Martinelli couldn't get a work permit? What could have happened? Because you look at, we're getting on to Wellington Silva, but imagine he was one of them where you've seen it at Arsenal, where typically in Spain, we loan you to a number of clubs while we're waiting to assess your work permit status. Bunch of different clubs with different managers, philosophies, dynamics that might not be good for you. You can see how they won't excel, and you can see how having multiple different environments isn't going to help you reach potential. Versus if we had one central based hub, like in Holland, for, let's say, there might be the next Martinelli who can't get a work permit here, but we can house him there from 18 to 20 at a team that plays similar football to us, has a similar philosophy. Of course, this team is not a farm. They need to win their stuff, but it's good conditions, stability. He providing with stability to sit down for a couple of years for them to move him over. And when you look at, again, I'm not saying these players would have necessarily been world class, but or whatever, but there is a consistent theme with Joel Campbell not having, he wasn't really that good, really, if we're honest, but he could have had more of an opportunity at Arsenal. But he had a lot of different loan spells. When you look at Pedro Berfelo, Samuel Colindo from Bolivia, Wellington Silva, the purpose of this feed, Rio Mayachi to a degree. Carlos Vela's gone on to have a good career at Sociedad and gone on to have a good career in America and obviously played for Arsenal. But the theme is there with him as well. And there's plenty others. You look at Wellington Silva, as you lot know, I've been reading The Athletic and there's a report on him. I think he's spoken to The Athletic. But as you don't know, he dazzled as a 15-year-old on trial at Arsenal. Arsenal were waiting for him for more or less 2-3 years, from 15 to turn 18. 2 or 3 years, I say, 'cause I don't know the month he turned 15, at 17, 18 at the time. He was quality, you know, he had the strength, he had that raw aggression, he was very skillful, he smacked up Norwich in his debut. You know, you could even see at Bolton, he had the skills, but for one reason or another, not many Arsenal fans would know him. You're scratching your head at him, people. He even scored a 25-yard screamer. He's been speaking as to why it didn't work out for him at the Emirates, people. And he said, he's spoken a lot, so it's not necessarily what I'm going to say at the time, but all the bits I found relevant, I'm going to go through. He has said, sorry, people. I was very, sorry. It was one of the most important moments in my life. I was very young, but I made sure that I made the most of every moment, every game, every training session. And if you remember, not only did he have a trial at Arsenal, he was invited on a couple of times to train with us. So he made sure he excelled. It was one of the most important moments in my life. It will always carry with me. Unfortunately, things didn't work out quite as I'd hoped. He was obviously scouted during the night cup, allegedly, people, by former Arsenal scout, now technical director of Red Bull, Barantino in Brazil. He was spotted playing, obviously, in there, and we moved quickly to have him on trial. As you lot know, the first obstacle Arsenal encountered was FIFA's Article 19 regulation, which dedicated that they were not formally allowed to sign Wellington until his 18th birthday. This meant a significant wait for Wellington and Arsenal alike. Although the base of the deal with Fluminense, can't say the name, was hammered out in a matter of weeks, Wellington would have to remain in Brazil for another 2 years. So we obviously had him on trial at 15. He signed as a 16-year-old formally, and we've had to sit on our hands until he's 18 at least to get him over the globe to the continent of Europe in some capacity, whether that's a work permit to play in England. And who knows, life might have been different for him because, you know, some players, you know, Martinelli might not have been Martinelli if he went out on several loans. Joe Willock, Scott McTominay might be not at their two clubs if they were players who went out on loan. Certain players excel on loan and wouldn't have done so if they had the chance already. Certain men are better being that 18-year-old to 20 in and about at the side, on the sidelines for a couple of years. Some man will thrive at number of loan spells. Some man won't. Some man need to stay somewhere. All footballers are different. And I do think things might have been different had he been allowed to start his career at 18 and be under Wenger and being around versus these kind of out of sight, out of mind, inconsistent loan spells and environments that won't necessarily be the best for a young man relatively. And it went on to say, Arsenal had watched Wellington when he was over. He was an Arsenal signing as much as anyone. What said one Arsenal insider? This wasn't a player being brought for the academy. The intention was for him to go straight into the senior setup. The fee reflected that. Arsenal put down a significant sum for the teenager with add-ons. The fee could exceed 4 million. In that period between his trial and his birthday, Arsenal were able to obtain a temporary work visa that enabled Wellington to occasionally come and train, as well as playing friendly matches. In February 2010, more than a year after the astonishing display against Norwich, Wellington was in England for a friendly against Dagenham and Redbridge. Wenger was on the sideline. When Wellington bent in his second goal of the game off the far post, Arsenal turned to scout Steve Morrow and quibbed, can he play against Chelsea this weekend? Which obviously he couldn't. Later that month, though, he would make his first team debut for Fluminense and start and score in a 5-1 win. By May, the 17-year-old had also appeared in Brazil's Serie A. So he was making progress. Now, I'm not going to read them all out, but there was questions when he was stationed in Brazil at the time, literally just after making his move to Arsenal, having to stay there, about his professionalism, about his work ethic, whether that's legitimate, whether he dropped off because he got the Arsenal move, whether it's lies, whether it's, we don't know in it, but that's something that was said. That was something that was said. And I'm not going to go out again, but you know, it was a vice president at the time came out and spoke on such people. Someone even said, we gave him special treatment, but he never showed that he wanted to establish himself as a professional. We're not a club. Sorry, I'm reading from another space. He said, Muricy isn't going to give a chance to those who in training show that they don't want to play. He started well, but later he didn't dedicate himself and didn't show the right attitude, which isn't what you want to hear. By October, they were obviously ready to allow Wellington to train with Arsenal ahead of completing his transfer. He was still in an adaptation, and then the article went on to talk about his adaptation period, and he said, I stayed with Sandro, the scout who took me there. He would accompany me to training, making sure I understood the instructions. It was difficult to get into conversation with people there. I was limited to players who spoke Portuguese or Spanish. Arsenal had received assurances that Wellington, like Denilson, would be granted a special talent visa required to play in the UK. Unfortunately, those assurances turned out to be misplaced. Despite Arsenal's conviction about the player and Wenger's personal testimony, Wellington's work permit was rejected. His lack of playing time with Fluminense had impacted his involvement in the Brazilian national age groups and ultimately hurt his chances. He was close to tears when told of having to go out on loan again. He said, when they told me I would have to leave, I was really upset. Honestly, I didn't want to go. I didn't expect it. Then obviously one of his loan spells he spent time in Levante in Spain. And again, I don't want to talk about a man's professionalism or not, but sometimes this can be youthful naivety, but they can come back to bite you. A local station accused him of staying up and engaging on social media and also eating too many pizzas. He was subsequently, publicly criticized by Luis Garcia, his coach at the time, for such. And Garcia said, "I want him to be more professional in his behavior." He told us a press conference, Arsenal want, people. He said that at a press conference, I couldn't see the quotations, but he said, Arsenal want us to work and help him, and not only in terms of football. We've drawn up a program for him, and I want more time spent with his teammates to help him settle with the different language. So maybe he screams someone that's very introvert. He wanted to stay around his friends. He didn't really want to socialize, and he really struggled with the language barrier, maybe way of life at Levante, or where he was at the time. He hit back and said it was overblown. He said, at the start, I had a lot of trouble sleeping. I hadn't been there long. And because I'd come from Brazil, which is 4 or 5 hours behind, I wasn't tired at 11 or 12 at night. The day before my debut, I was in my room, unable to sleep. I had 2 friends staying with me, so I went to hang out with them in the living room. They were doing a live video on Twitter, and we made a pizza. It wasn't a regular thing. People made a big deal out of it, but it happened just at one time. Now, at the time, social media wasn't what it is now. So, while you should have been a bit sensible to know, okay, let me go to bed, or at least appear that I'm going to bed, or at least not just get caught on this video. You engaged in stuff. So a lot of it is probably youthful naivety and meaning no harm, but he probably needed to be aware of what he's doing. And this, I don't think he's left to his own devices. I'm not going to sit there and say Arsenal brought someone as a teenager and just left them to their own devices in Spain, because they wouldn't do that. Welfare and things with our club don't do that. But from a footballing point of view, if he stayed at the club and he had a fellow countryman who's been there and done it in the Prem, a fellow South American, he might change his ways, or he might have looked at things a bit differently and whatnot, versus he was left to kind of make his own tough mistakes, which, come back to haunt you. He said it was an innocent thing. There was no malice in it, but it was a good lesson to learn. I was very young and didn't realize that people would be watching. It was an honest mistake and I paid for it. So yeah, man, he had two separate loan spells with Levante, spanning across almost a full year. He made just 2 senior appearances. Yeah, man, he really did struggle. And he went on to say, if I had known about the loans before signing for the club, I would have thought twice. I would have gone to a club where I could have stayed, even if that was the youth team. But unfortunately, it didn't work like that. And I had to go from club to club. The whole process left me a bit demotivated. I wasn't able to perform and develop. And it would. You're going back to Arsenal for pre-season, and then you're heading to a random club for the next season. Some are in, some are out, in Spain or wherever. Different teams, different outlooks. Managers might be playing you different ways and stuff, and you're not able to develop. It could have been a benefit staying and probably training with the first team and playing for the 23s and whatnot. And it could have even been better just holding off from signing for Arsenal in hindsight and just keep applying yourself. But I think away from what Arsenal could have done better, I think he needs to take some responsibility. It was a bit of naivety there. If you are demotivated, I'm not saying that's not the fault. But there's been many people that have been in these sort of situations and turned it around. And there's been a couple, man, you might forget a man's ever played for Arsenal, but he's a household name. So yes, demotivation it is a valid reason, but you could have, there's been question marks over the team you was at in Brazil, over your professionalism, couple of loan spells. You're saying there's a bit demotivated. You need to pull yourself back. And I don't think your conduct is perfect, and it probably has played a part as to why, despite leaving Arsenal, you're not known by any stretch of the imagination in Europe. You're going back to Brazil and having a fairly decent time of things. Of course, he would have thought twice about joining Arsenal, and anyone would. But he also said he has nothing. It's important to remember he's got nothing but fond memories and nothing but good things to say. But he said, I learned a lot from it all. I can't have any regrets. There's no point in me sitting here lamenting all that. Now, it was a learning process and it helped me grow as a person. Today, I'm more mature because of those experiences. So, yeah, man, it's nice to see from him. But pardon me, on that note, I think we've spoken obviously about Wellington. We've spoken about Denis Suarez. I'm going to get out of here. People, DG.